Dr. Amelia Volka stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring out into the dark void of space. The stars shimmered faintly, distant and cold. Below her, the frozen surface of planet Givra stretched endlessly, its icy crust hiding secrets older than human history. It was here, deep within the frozen caverns, that an ancient alien artifact had been found. It was Amelia's mission to unlock its mysteries. She was the lead scientist aboard the Aurora, a high-tech research space station that orbited the planet. Her reputation in the scientific community was impeccable, but outside the lab, she kept to herself. Socializing was never her strength. Her world consisted of equations, theories, and the quiet hum of machines. It was comfortable, predictable, or at least it used to be. The artifact, a crystalline object unlike anything anyone had ever seen, was the heart of her obsession. The crew had found it deep beneath the planet's icy surface, locked away in a chamber that seemed to resist every attempt to breach it. Yet, once inside, the artifact had beckoned. The moment Amelia touched it, the temperature in the chamber plummeted. Every object around her froze instantly, but not her. She remained untouched by the freezing cold that claimed everything else at first. She thought it was a glitch in the sensors, a strange anomaly. But the more she studied it, the more she realized something was wrong, something she couldn't explain. The artifact didn't just freeze things, it seemed to live. It pulsed, faintly, as if it had its own heartbeat. The crystalline surface shimmered with an eerie glow, and whenever Amelia made contact with it, she could feel a tug something deep within her, like a connection being made. It wasn't just a cold object, it was alive, somehow aware of her presence. She had spent hours, days even, running tests, scanning it from every angle, but the answers never came. The more she learned, the less she understood. As the lead researcher, it was her job to uncover its secrets, but no matter what method she used, she couldn't get any closer to unlocking its true nature. All she knew was that the artifact had a power far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The crew began to take notice. One by one, they observed her in disbelief. Amelia was the only one unaffected by the artifact's freezing power. When others approached it, their hands or tools would immediately frost over, ice crawling up their arms like a creeping death. But Amelia? She could touch it, study it, and feel nothing. It was as if the artifact recognized her, chose her. Then came the message.it arrived one evening, hidden within a set of encrypted files that Amelia had received during her routine data check. The transmission was ancient, possibly from the very civilization that created the artifact. It contained a warning: the artifact is a weapon, not a tool. It was designed to destroy entire civilizations. And you, Amelia Volka, have been chosen to wield it. Her heart raced as she decoded the message. Chosen? By the artifact? But why her? She wasn't special, at least not in any way that she could understand. She had never believed in fate or destiny. Yet here she was, inexplicably untouched by the artifact's power, while others around her suffered. The message was clear, though. The artifact wanted her. It needed her. But what for? Was it to be used as a weapon, to reshape the universe in its image? Or was it something else, something more dangerous than she had imagined? Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at the precipice of something massive, something she wasn't prepared for. The more she pondered the implications, the more questions arose. Was the artifact sentient, aware of what it was doing? Did it have a purpose beyond destruction? And if so, what was it? The answers, if they even existed, seemed to be buried within the artifact itself, waiting for her to discover them. The crew was growing increasingly uneasy. Some of them began to question Amelia's immunity to the artifact. Some believed it was a mere coincidence, a trick of the mind, but others were more suspicious. Arlen Holt, the station's captain, insisted that they should focus on the artifact's potential military applications. The others were becoming restless, torn between the desire for knowledge and the fear of what they were dealing with. Amelia tried to reassure them, but doubt gnawed at her. She had always prided herself on being in control of her work, on understanding the things she studied. But this was different. This wasn't a puzzle to solve, It was a ticking bomb, one she had no idea how to defuse. And she had no choice but to keep going. The pressure mounted as she delved deeper into the artifact's mysteries. It wasn't just the physical world around her that was changing, it was her as well. Each time she interacted with the artifact, the connection between them grew stronger, more personal. She could feel it in her bones, in her mind. It was as if the artifact was calling to her, whispering secrets she couldn't yet understand. But the more she learned, the more she realized that the path she was walking was not one of discovery, it was one of destruction. Amelia's calm, controlled life had shattered in an instant. The answers she sought could very well change everything: humanity's future, the fate of the galaxy, and perhaps even the very fabric of reality itself. But the most frightening part of all? She might never get the chance to understand what the artifact truly wanted from her, because in uncovering its secrets, she was unknowingly setting off a chain of events that could be far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. As the days passed aboard the Aurora, Dr. Amelia Voca. Obsession with the artifact grew. The strange, crystalline object, once nothing more than a curiosity, had become a powerful enigma, pulling her deeper into its mysteries. The more she interacted with it, the more unsettling dreams filled her sleep. In these dreams, she found herself standing on a vast, frozen world. The sky was a cold, dark gray, and the wind howled through ancient ruins, the remnants of a civilization long gone. Figures moved in the distance, alien beings, their forms half frozen in the ice, as though they had been preserved for eternity. The dreams were vivid and recurring, becoming harder to ignore with each passing night. She felt an overwhelming sense of loss, as if the alien race that had once thrived here had been wiped out by their own creation. The artifact was at the center of their downfall, and it had destroyed everything they had built. But why was she seeing these dreams? Why her? She had always been a scientist, focused on facts and data, yet these dreams felt like a message, one she couldn't understand. As her research continued, Amelia's growing unease was mirrored by tensions aboard the station. Captain Arlen Holt, the station's military overseer, had grown increasingly obsessed with the artifact's potential. To him, it was more than just a relic, it was a weapon, a powerful one. Arlen's views on the artifact had shifted dramatically over the last few weeks. Where once he had been cautious and focused on its scientific value, he now saw only its potential to be harnessed as a tool of war. "We need to weaponize it, Amelia," Arlen had said, his voice low and serious as they sat in the station's command center, the cold blue light of the artifact flickering across his face. "The galaxy is full of threats, alien races that want to conquer us, rogue factions that would destroy everything we've worked for. This is our chance to gain an advantage, to ensure humanity's survival." Amelia, however, wasn't so sure. She had spent years studying the artifact, and the more she learned, the more she realized it wasn't a simple weapon, it was something far more dangerous. The message she had decoded from the ancient transmission warned her of the artifact's destructive potential, but it also hinted at something more profound. It was not just a tool of war, it was a living entity, a sentient being capable of manipulating time and space. To wield it without understanding its full implications was reckless. But Arlen didn't see it that way. The pressure from the higher-ups back on Earth was mounting. They wanted results, and they wanted them quickly. The military had already begun pushing Arlen to accelerate their experiments, to make use of the artifact before anyone else could get their hands on it. He was caught between his duty to protect humanity and his growing obsession with the artifact's power. "We have no choice, Amelia," Arlen insisted one day, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "We either use it or someone else will. And when they do, we'll be wiped out. It's not just about survival, it's about protecting the future." Amelia, torn between her moral beliefs and the mounting pressure, tried to explain that they didn't fully understand the artifact yet. It could be more than just a weapon, it could be a tool to destroy everything. But Arlen didn't listen. He ordered the first of many experiments, pushing the limits of what they could safely do with the artifact. The results were catastrophic. Equipment malfunctioned, the station's systems flickered in and out of power, and the landscape outside the station seemed to warp, as if the very fabric of reality itself was being altered. It was clear that the artifact was reacting, but how? And why? In the midst of this chaos, Amelia received a warning one she couldn't ignore. A message came through, encrypted beyond anything she had ever seen. She spent hours decrypting it, her fingers trembling as she pieced together the fragmented text. The message was chilling. The artifact is not just a weapon. It is a memory storage device, a recorder of time. Every touch it makes sends ripples through the past, resetting the fabric of the universe itself. This is why your civilization is not the first to find it. The artifact has been used before, and each time it reshapes reality, it leaves behind a scar. Amelia felt the weight of the message settle into her bones. This was not just a weapon, it was a time shifter, capable of manipulating the very course of history. Each touch, each use, altered the past, changing the outcome of civilizations. And humanity wasn't the first to come into contact with it. The race that had created it, an ancient species long extinct, had once wielded its power, but in doing so, they had destroyed themselves. The message was a warning. The artifact would destroy them all if used incorrectly. Shaken by the revelation, Amelia confronted Arlen, but the rift between them had already widened. Arlen's obsession with the artifact's potential weaponization was growing, and he was no longer interested in listening to Amelia's concerns. "You're overreacting," he said, his voice hard. "This is what humanity has been working toward for centuries: dominance. We need this power." But Amelia wasn't so sure. As the reality outside the station seemed to distort and twist, time itself seemed to fracture. The frozen landscape on the planet below began to warp, becoming something alien, something not entirely real. The boundaries between what was and what could be began to blur, and Amelia realized with a cold certainty that they had reached a point of no return. The artifact wasn't just changing the present, it was changing the past as well, erasing what had once been and replacing it with something new, something dangerous. The political climate within the station grew increasingly volatile. Some members of the crew, especially those with military ties, sided with Arlen, seeing the artifact as humanity's only chance at securing their future. Others, including a few scientists and engineers, feared the consequences of pushing forward with the experiments. The station split into factions, each with its own agenda. Some wanted to use the artifact, some wanted to destroy it, and others simply wanted to survive whatever was coming. Amid this chaos, Amelia uncovered a startling truth. Dr. Severin, a former colleague she had trusted, was secretly working with an underground faction. This group, she learned, was willing to go to any lengths to seize control of the artifact for their own purposes that, if realized, could mean the end of not just humanity, but of time itself. Severin had been feeding information to the underground group, ensuring that they would be the ones to claim the artifact when the time came. He had once been Amelia's ally, a fellow scientist, but now he was a traitor, a man willing to sacrifice everything for the power the artifact promised. His betrayal cut deep, and Amelia realized just how far the stakes had risen. With the fabric of reality itself starting to unravel, Amelia had to make a choice. She could no longer sit idly by. She had to confront Arlen, stop Severin, and find a way to protect the artifact from those who would use it to reshape the universe according to their will. But time was running out. Every decision she made sent ripples through reality, and the consequences were becoming harder to predict. The artifact had already begun to change the world she knew, and she feared it might already be too late to undo the damage. The tensions on the Aurora had reached a breaking point. Dr. Severin's betrayal was the final nail in the coffin. Amelia had trusted him. She had once considered him an ally, someone who shared her vision of understanding the artifact's secrets. But now, it was clear that Severin had been playing a much darker game all along. The revelation came like a slap to her face. As she stood in the research lab, frantically scanning data from the artifact, Severin entered, his expression unreadable. There was a strange calmness about him now, as though everything he had been hiding was finally coming to fruition. Amelia barely had time to react before he spoke. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he said quietly, his eyes cold. "But humanity is not ready for this. We never were. We were never meant to handle this power. It's too much for us." Before she could even comprehend what he meant, he lunged for the artifact, his hands reaching for it with a hunger she had never seen in him before. "Stop!" Amelia cried, her voice breaking with panic. But Severin was already too far gone. His intentions were clear. He wanted to take control of the artifact, to use its power for something far more dangerous than anything she could have imagined. Amelia's heart raced. She couldn't let him do it. She couldn't let the artifact fall into the hands of someone so willing to destroy everything to reshape the universe in their own image. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, she darted toward him, her hands slamming against the artifact's crystal surface, trying to stop him. The moment her fingers made contact, the air around them seemed to crackle. A pulse of energy erupted from the artifact, throwing both Severin and Amelia across the room. The station shook violently, alarms blaring as the artifact's power surged like a wave, too strong to control. For a brief moment, Amelia felt as though her entire existence was being pulled apart. The fabric of reality itself seemed to fracture, warping, twisting into something unrecognizable. Then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Amelia's body felt weightless, as though she was suspended between two worlds. Her mind was no longer her own. She saw everything at once, every possible timeline, every moment, every possibility that could ever exist. The universe stretched out before her, infinite and malleable. She wasn't just in space anymore. She was beyond it. Beyond time, beyond reality itself. The artifact was no longer just an alien relic. It was a consciousness. An ancient being with a purpose so vast that Amelia could scarcely comprehend it. She could feel it, its presence swirling inside her, pulling her deeper into its knowledge. It whispered to her, not with words, but with feelings, with impressions, with truth. The truth about existence. The artifact had not been created to destroy civilizations or grant immense power. It was a test, a trial to find the one being capable of seeing beyond the boundaries of their universe, someone who could perceive the multiverse, the endless parallel realities that existed outside of time. The race that built it, the ancient species whose civilization had fallen to ruin, had used the artifact to find a successor. They had created it to determine who could inherit their role in preserving the delicate balance of the multiverse. For millennia, it had been dormant, waiting for the right individual to come along. And now, it had chosen her. Amelia's heart pounded in her chest as the magnitude of what was happening finally settled in. The artifact, in its strange alien way, had recognized something in her, something that made her different from the rest of humanity. She wasn't just a scientist. She wasn't just a human being. She was the one who could see. She could perceive the threads of reality that others couldn't. And the artifact, this ancient entity, now wanted her to carry on its legacy. But there was a cost. The truth hit her like a punch to the gut. The universe was fragile. The balance of existence was delicate, constantly teetering on the edge of collapse. Humanity, with all its flaws, had been a part of that balance for so long. But humanity was corrupt. It was ignorant, unaware of the true nature of the universe and the responsibilities that came with power. The artifact had been designed to preserve the multiverse, to prevent destruction. But to do that, the universe would need to be reshaped. To preserve this reality, humanity's place in it had to be sacrificed. Amelia had a choice to make. She could allow humanity to continue as it was corrupt, blind, and ignorant, or she could choose to rewrite reality itself, reshaping existence to ensure the survival of the multiverse. The artifact had already begun to see her as its successor, its new keeper. The future of everything now rested on her shoulders. The fate of not just humanity, but of every living thing in the multiverse, was in her hands. But the price was steep. To accept the artifact's power, to become the one to oversee the balance of all timelines, she would have to let go of humanity. They could not continue to exist as they were if she chose to preserve the multiverse. It was one or the other. Amelia felt the weight of that decision pressing down on her. She could hear Arlene's voice in her head, urging her to use the artifact as a weapon to save humanity. But she knew the truth now. Humanity could not be saved in its current form. It had to evolve, or it would destroy itself and everything else by its own ignorance. Tears blurred Amelia's vision as she considered her options. She had always fought for humanity's survival. She had dedicated her life to science, to knowledge, to progress. But now, she had to choose between that and the future of the multiverse. The artifact, its consciousness intertwined with hers, seemed to wait for her decision. It was patient. It had seen countless beings come and go, and it knew that the hardest part was not understanding the power it was making the sacrifice. Amelia stood at the precipice of history. In the silence of the moment, she felt the pull of both worlds, the future of humanity and the call of the artifact. But she knew, deep down, what she had to do. She was no longer just Emilia Volka, the scientist. She was the one chosen to preserve the balance. She was the new keeper of the multiverse. And with that, reality itself began to shift again, as Emilia made the final choice that would change everything. Emilia Volka stood in the heart of the lab, surrounded by the hum of machinery that had once felt so familiar, so comforting. Now, the atmosphere was thick with the weight of her decision. Her fingers still tingled from the last contact with the artifact, the ancient entity now merging with her mind, filling her thoughts with knowledge beyond comprehension. The multiverse stretched out before her, every timeline twisting and bending like threads in a vast cosmic web. And she was at the center of it all, the one chosen to preserve the balance. She had made her choice. There was no turning back. The artifact's power surged through her, its consciousness intertwining with hers. The universe around her seemed to flicker, as if the very fabric of reality was being rewoven. Humanity, with all its ambition and destructive tendencies, would no longer be allowed to shape the future. Its role had been redefined not as the dominant force, but as caretakers of the multiverse. They would survive, yes, but they would no longer hold the reins of destiny. As Emilia's consciousness expanded, she could feel the vastness of existence. The ancient race that had created the artifact had intended for someone like her to come along, someone who could see the truth. The truth that humanity, with its arrogance and ignorance, could never be allowed to control the universe. It was not a cruel decision. It was a necessary one. The multiverse could not survive with a species like humanity holding the power. If allowed to continue unchecked, their destructive tendencies would unravel the very fabric of reality. The reshaping was gradual, like a sculptor chipping away at a block of marble. Time itself bent and stretched, reality fractured and healed. Civilizations rose and fell in the blink of an eye, but humanity's place in the cosmos was no longer at the top of the hierarchy. Their civilizations, though vast and mighty, were now humbled. They would no longer dominate the galaxy. They would serve as caretakers, guardians of the multiverse, preserving the balance of existence rather than disrupting it. Emilia could feel the weight of the artifact's power pressing down on her, a constant presence within her mind. She was no longer just Emilia Volka, the scientist. She had become the keeper of the multiverse's balance. The burden was immense, and yet there was a strange sense of peace in knowing she had made the right choice. It wasn't about destroying humanity. It was about guiding it toward a new path, one where it could survive, evolve, and learn its place in the universe. But as the multiverse shifted, Emilia realized the full extent of her sacrifice. Humanity's future had been irrevocably altered. The arrogance that had defined their rise to power was undone, but the cost was steep. They would no longer be the masters of their fate, and many would struggle to accept their new role. Some might resent the artifact's influence over their lives. Some might never understand why they had been so humbled. In the quiet of the lab, Emilia took a deep breath. Her time as humanity's champion had ended. The universe would continue, but it would no longer revolve around them. It was a humbling thought, and yet it was the only way forward. As she made her final decision, she sent a message out to the remaining human colonies, her voice echoing across the vastness of space. We are not alone in the universe, and we are not the most important. The words were simple, but they held an immense weight. Emilia knew that humanity's place in the cosmos was no longer guaranteed. They would have to find a new purpose, a new role. They would have to learn humility, patience, and respect for the forces that governed the multiverse. They would no longer be the rulers of their own destiny, but they would survive. And perhaps, in time, they would grow wiser. The artifact's presence within her was overwhelming, but it was also comforting. It was a reminder that the multiverse was in safe hands, even if humanity no longer understood its true place. Amelia had made the ultimate sacrifice not for humanity's survival, but for the preservation of the greater cosmic truth. The artifact had chosen her because she was the one who could see that truth, the one who could guide the universe toward a more balanced future. As the last traces of the artifact's energy merged with her own, Amelia felt a strange stillness wash over her. The decision had been made. The multiverse would continue, but it would never be the same. Humanity would be relegated to a more humble existence, their ambitions tempered by the knowledge that they were not the center of everything. But there was a lingering question in the air, one that Amelia knew could never truly be answered. Had she made the right choice? Had she chosen humanity's survival, or had she made the ultimate sacrifice to protect the universe from itself? The multiverse was vast, and its future was uncertain. But one thing was clear. Amelia's actions would echo throughout time, and the galaxy would never forget the truth she had revealed. Humanity would live on. They would be caretakers, guardians, and students of a universe far larger than they had ever realized. As the last vestiges of the artifact's influence faded, Amelia felt her consciousness begin to drift away. Her body was no longer her own, and yet she was at peace. The future would unfold as it must, and humanity would have to find its own path. Perhaps, in time, they would learn to accept their new role in the grand tapestry of existence. Or perhaps they would struggle against it, forever haunted by the question of what could have been. The truth was frozen in time, a delicate balance that would be maintained for eternity. The artifact's message had been sent, and now, only time would tell if humanity had truly learned its place in the vast, ever-expanding multiverse.